It's 6 p.m. here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with the headlines. Typhoon Chaba has cleared out of Korea, leaving behind a trail of destruction. The death toll rose overnight and affected areas are grappling with rescue and recovery operations. Though there are positive signs of life, Korea will move to use the remainder of a budget supplement to prop up the economy so it can be better prepared against internal and external risk factors. A grand job fair is held at COEX Convention Center in Seoul. Korean startups and SMEs, including the ones created through the government's innovation centers, are opening their doors to young people looking to start work. Typhoon Chaba has moved out of Korea but left a lasting impression. At least 7 people died and 3 are missing. Restoration efforts are ongoing, but road to recovery looks tough, especially with damage reports still coming in. Hwang Ho-jun has our top story.
It took less than a day for Chaba, named after a tropical flower, to ravage the southern coast of Korea. According to the Safety Ministry, 7 fatalities are confirmed so far, and 3 people are still missing. The death toll includes a firefighter who went missing Wednesday after he was swept away by the currents while on a rescue operation in Ulsan. More than 200,000 households lost power, though it was mostly restored by Thursday morning. Chaba also devastated about 9,300 hectares of farmland, nearly 30 times the area of New York Central Park. The storm also inundated 508 houses, forcing about 200 people to evacuate. They're now taking refuge at local schools and community centers. Thousands of vehicles are reported to have sustained severe water damage due to the flooding. The typhoon has also taken a toll on local industry. 2 Hyundai Motor plants in Ulsan and 20 other industrial facilities in the area were forced to suspend operations for a while on Wednesday due to flooding. The General Insurance Association of Korea said more than $18 million worth of damage claims were made directly after the storm swept over the coastal area. The total economic loss is still being calculated as the reports roll in. Thousands of private, public, and military recovery support staff have been deployed in restoration and aid work in the affected areas. The government said it will come up with a detailed restoration plan by the end of this month. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, Korea will pour more government and public sector funds into the economy by the end of the year. Our Shin Se-min highlights the latest efforts to help prop up domestic demand and tackle looming uncertainties.
The government is looking to dole out an extra 10 trillion won, or nearly $9 billion by the year's end, to help prop up Korea's lackluster economy and minimize the fallout from downside risks at home and abroad. The move is seen as a last-ditch effort, as continuous government action so far has been challenged by unfavorable economic factors.
The government will draw up all possible policy measures to help boost economic vitality and improve the country's fundamentals.
This comes as the government sees growing uncertainties looming from the Hanjin shipping crisis, walkouts from automakers and railway workers, and the corporate restructuring drive, despite some positive effects expected from an extra budget put into motion earlier in the second half of the year. Looking at the numbers, the additional spending plan of $9 billion comes on top of existing supplementary funds waiting to be spent this year. The government still has $14.9 billion from its extra budget and stimulus measures to be implemented. And there's now an additional commitment of $5.2 billion in spending from the central and local governments. Adding to this, $3 billion will be used to help companies in the public sector, namely Korea Electric Power and Korea Expressway Corporation, to win large-scale overseas contracts in infrastructure projects. When it comes to boosting domestic spending, the government says it'll find ways to simplify the use of collected credit card points. Last year, roughly $120 million worth of points expired without use, and the government said it will encourage local card firms to make use of the points by converting them into cash or alternative services. But even with the extra push, prospects still look gloomy enough that the country may not be able to reach its annual growth target of 2.8%. This is especially as some say these unprecedented measures come without enough time for sufficient implementation. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
A job fair to match young job seekers with startups fostered through the government's creative economy drive is on. President Park Geun-hye highlighted the importance of passionate young people joining the workforce and pledged full support for young job creation efforts at the opening ceremony. Song Ji-sun has more.
Korea's network of 17 innovation centers is bearing fruit, and the startups launched at the centers are now actively hunting for new hires. The businesses appeared at a youth job fair held Thursday at COEX Convention Center in Seoul, alongside 350 other startups and small and mid-sized companies.
Our wearable devices, which allow the wearer to hear sounds from smart devices through vibrations that emanate through the fingers, has already attracted $1.5 million from a crowdfunding campaign. As our product is also attracting global interest, we're aiming to hire 5 more people at this job fair to be in charge of international sales and marketing.
좋은 인재 꼭 찾으시고 청년들에게도 미래로 많이 뻗어나갈 수 있는 벤처에 취업을 하게 되는 거고 같이 꿈을 이루실 것 같아요. 그렇게만 되면.
President Park Geun-hye, speaking at the event she initiated, also highlighted innovation and creation as key concepts for growth and entrepreneurship.
4차 산업혁명의 시대에는 창조적인 혁신과 과감한 도전이 국가 경쟁력의 원천이고 일자리 창출의 동력입니다. 우리 기업들도 창조적인 혁신을 통해 그동안 없었던 산업과 일자리를 만들어내야 하고 청년들도 창의적 아이디어로 무장하여 새로운 일자리에 과감하게 도전해야 합니다.
The government has also vowed to provide young job seekers with customized programs offering everything from career counseling to job training, while also encouraging startups to explore new markets with new industries. President Park also vowed to use her creative economy and cultural prosperity initiatives in conjunction with labor reform, restructuring, and deregulation to create quality jobs for the nation's young people. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Seoul's top diplomat and his EU counterpart vowed to work together on all levels to end North Korea's nuclear program. That includes implementing existing UNSC sanctions and possible independent measures against the regime. Kwon So-hwa has more on their meeting in Brussels.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and the European Union's Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini have agreed to enforce pressure on North Korea on the bilateral and multilateral fronts. The two diplomats met Wednesday on the sidelines of the Brussels Conference on Afghanistan for talks on the effective enhancement of cooperation to counter North Korea's latest nuclear and missile tests. They agreed that North Korea's 5th nuclear test, conducted a month ago, has highlighted the urgency of the nuclear issue more than at any point before. They pledged to work together in all possible respects, which includes cooperation on efforts to craft and implement even stronger UN Security Council sanctions than the ones in effect now.
South Korea and the EU have agreed to closely consult on detailed measures for the swift adoption of a strong, new UN Security Council resolution.
Minister Yoon expressed his appreciation for the EU's efforts regarding North Korea's provocations and asked for greater support through independent sanctions and diplomatic pressure. In return, Mogherini promised to consider more specific measures targeting Pyongyang's nuclear capabilities. The two also agreed to move forward with plans for a South Korea-EU summit next year to further expand their cooperation on global issues. Kwon So-hwa, Arirang News.
As the U.S. presidential election nears, security policy against North Korea has become a hot issue. While Washington has the capability to strike North Korea, experts say it's unlikely. Connie Kim has this report.
As North Korea's nuclear capability advances with 2 nuclear tests this year, the idea of a preemptive strike against North Korea has re-emerged as a topic of speculation within the United States. In the recent vice presidential debate, Democrat Tim Kaine said a president should, quote, take action to defend the U.S. against imminent threats in response to a question about whether the U.S. should take preemptive action against intelligence that North Korea was about to launch a nuclear-tipped missile capable of reaching the United States. However, he declined to say what kind of action and said it would be necessary to first determine how credible the intelligence is. The current U.S. administration has always been very cautious about the idea of a preemptive strike on North Korea. In an interview with CBS in April, U.S. President Barack Obama said Washington's first priority is to protect the American people and U.S. allies, South Korea and Japan, which are vulnerable to North Korea. He said the U.S. could potentially destroy Pyongyang, but indicated that would not be a welcome solution, as both the humanitarian costs and South Korea's proximity to the north would both be disqualifying factors. That makes the likelihood of a preemptive strike extremely unlikely, despite any speculation to the contrary.
If the United States had intended to engage in a preemptive strike after the fifth nuclear test, it should have come a lot earlier than now. We're many days past the fifth nuclear test. So I don't think that it is a highly probable action that the United States government is contemplating at the moment.
Analysts say that Washington's position will ultimately depend on the results of the upcoming presidential election. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
South Korea's major parties clashed over various issues brought up at the ongoing parliamentary audit. That's no surprise. But according to our Park Ji-won, they were united on one thing: disaster relief aid for those in the typhoon and earthquake-hit South.
There were clashes and conciliation at the National Assembly on Thursday as the parliament's annual audit continued. The main topics at the sessions were the corruption allegations surrounding two foundations and the case of a farmer who died after being hit by a police water cannon during an anti-government protest last year. The opposition bloc had submitted a request to launch a special investigation into the case, but on Thursday, the ruling Saenuri Party warned that if the opposition attempts to push ahead with the probe unilaterally, another major clash is unavoidable. However, on another issue, lawmakers from both sides of the aisle came together to speak with one voice. They urged government officials to move quickly to rehabilitate the areas in the southeast that were hit by Typhoon Chaba this week and the two strong earthquakes last month. During the audit on the Nuclear Safety and Security Commission, lawmakers from the three major parties called on the government to conduct thorough safety checks on the dozens of nuclear power plants in the country, as many of them are built near the epicenter of the two earthquakes that hit Gyeongju in September. Lawmakers were also united in their call for typhoon relief. And in a meeting with the government earlier in the day, the ruling Saenuri Party urged officials to designate the areas hit by the storm as special disaster areas, which would make people in the zone eligible for relief aid. Meanwhile, ruling party chair Lee Jeong-hyun paid a visit to flood-damaged areas in the southeast, including Ulsan and Busan. He was discharged from the hospital Thursday, a couple of days earlier than expected, after a 4-day stay to recover from a week-long hunger strike. The opposition party said they welcomed the ruling party's actions to help citizens in need and vowed to visit the areas themselves. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
The Korean version of Zero Latency, or The Void virtual reality theme park, opened in Seoul. Our Kim Ji-yeon takes us there.
The latest trends in the virtual reality sector are being showcased at the Korea VR Festival, which kicked off on Thursday in Sangam-dong, Seoul. Around 80 VR companies and independent developers are participating in the 4-day event to display their products and services, including this gigantic robot, which was based on a robotic arm widely used in industry.
The general public will see a lot of our robot VRs in theme parks next year. In the longer term, however, we are aiming to broaden the use of these robot VRs in various other fields to permanently replace the need for human labor.
The festival also promotes business opportunities for local companies through its global networking and investment consultation programs.
The company has been successful so far in commercializing 4DX motion picture technology in theaters. Through the festival, we hope to partner with local VR developers to broaden our VR capabilities in things like shooting and interactive content.
The festival serves as a testbed of the local VR sector. It's for the grand showcase of local VR products and services planned for the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics.
The government pinpointed the VR sector as one of the 9 strategically important ICT sectors earlier this year. Last month, it had unveiled plans to invest a combined $36 million to help foster the VR and augmented reality sectors through 2017 in order to find a sustainable profit model for the long-term development of VR content in Korea. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The UNSC unanimously selected Antonio Guterres as the next UN Secretary-General. All that remains now a formal Security Council vote set for Thursday morning local time. In a 6th closed-door ballot on Wednesday, the former Prime Minister of Portugal received 13 encouraged votes and 2 no-opinion votes from the 15-member council. Most noteworthy is that none of the 5 veto-wielding powers on the council voted against him. Guterres is a former UN High Commissioner for Refugees and the former PM of Portugal who served from 1995 to 2002. Once confirmed, he will replace Ban Ki-moon, who finishes his second 5-year term at the end of December. That's our newscast for viewers around the world, but we have more domestic headliners for our Korean audience coming right up. This has been Daniel Che. Thank you for watching.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Devin Whiting with your in-depth domestic news. Korea's rice production last year hit a 6-year high of 4.3 million tons, and it's expected to break that record this year. Now, a big harvest might be good news, but it's caused an oversupply. The Korean government plans to buy this year's surplus to keep prices stable. Kim Hye-sung has this story.
The Korean government has decided to purchase all of this year's rice surplus to stabilize the price of the crop. The Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs estimates that the nation's farmers will supply 4.2 million tons of rice for 2016, meaning a 300,000-ton oversupply. The government has decided to purchase the excess by the end of the year. The amount it'll pay will be calculated using the average price for rice between October and December, which would be around $540 million. The exact amount is set to be fixed in November. Annual rice consumption in Korea has been on a steep decline over the past few decades, mainly due to changes in diet. According to Statistics Korea, the average person consumed 62.9 kilograms of rice last year, a 50% drop since 1985's 128.1 kilograms. But with rice production increasing, the government already has stores of 1.7 million tons as of August. As a further measure to tackle oversupply, the government will buy 390,000 tons this year to add to its stockpiles and to send overseas in the form of aid. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
With the makeup of Korean society rapidly changing, the latest data show more households consist of just one person than any other kind of arrangement. According to Statistics Korea, as of the end of last month, there were nearly 7.4 million single-member households, accounting for 34.8% of the total. Of those one-person homes, most of them, 52.8%, were people in their 50s or older. Two-member households were the second most common type at 21.3%. The data is in line with population trends in Korea, showing the country getting older and family sizes shrinking. For a 10th consecutive quarter, Korea has registered the world's fastest average internet speed. According to a regular report by content provider Akamai, Korea's average internet speed in the second quarter this year was clocked at 27 megabits per second, a 17% increase from the same time a year earlier. Rounding out the top 3 fastest countries or jurisdictions were Norway and Hong Kong. The world average is just 6.1 megabits a second, but that's rising quickly too, up 17% from last year. A local research team is close to sequencing for the first time the entire genome of a Korean individual. opening the door for developing new medicines tailored to the particular needs of Korean people. The research by a domestic biotechnology company, Macrogen, and a team from the College of Medicine at Seoul National University was published in the international science journal Nature. The researchers noted that non-Europeans are significantly underrepresented in the human genomes that have been sequenced. They added that around 18,000 genetic variations were found between conventionally used human reference genome and the sequenced genome of an Asian individual. And those are some of the stories we're following right now. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with more at 8 p.m. Korea time. Bye for now.